Hi, this is Nick from Paranormal Research Investigators UK. This is the next in a series of podcasts that we're doing. I'm with Andy. He's going to give us his considered opinion on the subject of vision and the paranormal, the effect that vision has on the paranormal, or perhaps the effect that paranormal has on vision, if you could look at it from that point of view. So, without further ado, I'll hand you over to Andy, and he'll talk about vision.
Right, Nick. Okay, so what I've done is I've made a list of things that happen or people report that happens to them, and this is just purely about what they see.
Okay.
It's not about any other senses. It's not about sound, it's not about touch, it's not about anything like that. We're just going to concentrate purely on what people report they see happens to them, or whether they see something that happens to other people. So the first thing that I want to start with is just basically talk about when someone reports a ghost, they might describe it as a transparent humanoid figure. They might say it looked solid to them, a solid humanoid. Some say they see a fully formed humanoid figure. Others report that they only saw part of the humanoid, so they might not see the legs, or they might not see the arm,
or the headless horseman,
or the head. The head. Sometimes they can report seeing the head by itself.
Yes. Yeah.
Talk about being lazy. They can't be asked to fully form, but that'll probably be me actually.
Yeah.
Miniature formed humanoid, so they see different size humanoids, not all normal size.
So like on a different scale, rather.
Yeah. They report that the humanoid fades away, or it might instantly disappear in front of their eyes. Yeah. Or some people report that this humanoid figure is suddenly sucked away as if it's in a vacuum. It's quite interesting. People report shadow people, various heights, but these are usually caught out of the corner of their eyes, which we'll talk about a bit more later on.
Yep.
People see black mass and apparent hauntings. People claim to see orbs. And do they have their own light source and move intelligently? These are orbs that you see with your eyes.
Right,
I'm not going to talk about photographs because that's a different topic.
Yeah.
But these are things that people apparently report with their own eyes. People say that when they see something paranormal, they see red eyes. They might see glowing shapes.
Yeah.
Mist. Sometimes the mist that appears can cast a shadow on a nearby wall, which is interesting. They might see white mist, which is only seen via infrared, and I think that happened on some poltergeist cases. Some people say they see blue mist. Some people say they see green, hovering, shining light. Some people say they see green fog. Some people say it might be ectoplasmic fog, mist or fog that can see with their own eyes. I mean, I don't believe in ectoplasmic plasm or whatever it's called, not by the photographs that you see.
It all looks a bit like candy floss, doesn't
it? I think they use dishcloth and all that sort of stuff.
Muslim, Muslim, not Muslim. That's correct. Muslim rags. But and of course the other thing is that people see the apparition. I mean, sometimes it's claimed that they're two-dimensional. In other words, they're almost like a cardboard cutout. Others claim that they're very much three-dimensional, so obviously they have perspective.
Well. I think a lot of people say it looked solid human. And I think after I go through this list, we'll talk a bit more about other alternative explanations for it.
Okay.
I mean, some people say they see blue flames and this can happen on thermal cameras. So that's interesting. Why? Because usually a flame would be red or yellow or hot, not cold.
Yes, but of course, again, that ties in with I guess folklore and the Jack in the Greens or jack-o'-lanterns or whatever people want to call them. Which I think most people attribute to some sort of marsh gas or something. But then people do claim that it has some sort of paranormal substance.
Yeah. Some people say that they see twinkles of blue light. I mean, what's interesting is blue-green tend to be, I believe, colours of electrons when they get excited. The wavelength can come off them. I'm not a particle physicist, so I could be wrong. I'm sure other people might say that's not true, but I have read somewhere that blue and green light are side effects of excited electrons.
That does have some sort of relationship, because, of course, if you think of the Northern Lights, I mean, I think that
this is not Newcastle. It's not Newcastle. It's not the time.
The city lights.
It's not the time fog.
Yeah, it's the again. Let me get me facts right. Rearrange my brain a little bit, but obviously the Northern Lights. Again, excited particles. Green, I think, is the oxygen. There are red hues, which I think is nitrogen. So again, that bears out that your idea in terms of the colour. I mean, I know red, but certainly the green.
Yeah. Doppelgangers. Some people, when they visually see an activity, they can claim to see themselves, or the spitting image of someone else. What I've noted is that when they do see figures, sometimes they can have just black eyes, or the eyes could just be all white. There's no kind of definition to the eyes.
Right.
What's interesting is that I've yet to come across a case where an apparition was able to physically pick up an object or move an object. You know, when you either see the apparition by itself, or you might see an object move by itself, but you'll not see an apparition move an object.
Yeah. Although objects move.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, I'm not saying they don't move, but of course the other thing, and I don't know whether you're going to come onto that, but it just as a thought, and perhaps we'll come onto that a little bit later, is the fact that to see something, I mean, for us as humans, to see something using our powers of vision, I mean, first of all, we use our eyes to receive the light, and then it's our brains, isn't it, that actually actually sees or makes sense of what we're looking at. But of course, what I'm trying to say is that for something to be seen, it either has to emit light or it has to effectively reflect light.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll come on to that.
And I do believe Thomas Fusco, who wrote Behind the Cosmic Veil, his argument that it would take the energy output of the sun for an apparition to get enough energy to be able to manifest.
Oh, okay. Right.
You know, so you're talking a lot of energy for one. For one phenomena. So he's quite skeptical about what is an apparition. You know, when people claim that the ghost draws energy from the surrounding environment, you know, from the heat. In fact, heat is probably one of the worst kind of energy sources he can draw from. But anyway, I'll go back onto the fact that when people do see an apparition, it's very rare for the apparition to talk to the person.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, you see it. They might be doing something, but they won't turn around and say, "Hi, how's it going? How's it hanging?" You know, you don't see an apparition engage much with the witness.
Yes, and I think that's not just a sort of talking. They don't seem to see you, although you don't necessarily. Although you're seeing them.
And sometimes they look surprised. Sometimes there's as if they are seeing you, and they're just as shocked as you are of seeing each other. Yes. Which then goes down into the line of, like, is it another sort of dimension, or is it another multi-world? You know,
a time slip.
Yeah, time slip. Yeah. So, teleports and airports are rarely seen in real time. Yeah, you normally notice an object would have moved position, but it's very rare to see it actually happen in front of your eyes.
Yep. Okay.
So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that when these things do apport, they appear to do it quite slowly.
Yeah.
So it's not in almost like real time. It doesn't seem to have that kind of real time effect when you're looking at it, and something's being thrown. It seems to be very sort of slowly, a bit slow motion, which gives it an otherworldly feel, I guess, to it.
Yeah, I mean, and just go slightly off topic, is the airports and the teleports. I think you mentioned it on the other podcast where a storm can feel warmer.
Yes.
And actually, when particles get excited and then start to go back down to the natural state, that can cause warmth, I believe.
Right.
So is there something about how the atoms are being manipulated for it to disappear and come back again? Or who knows? It's...
Well, that's the whole point. We don't.
Yeah. I mean, best I can do is throw a stone through a window. That's probably
not my windows. Not my windows.
But what I'm going to do, I mean, that's the kind of sort of observations I've made about the paranormal and vision.
Yes.
And you are right. We see with our brain, so our brain will fill in gaps. If it doesn't quite see something properly, it will what's called a visual substitution. It will fix something into that place.
Yeah, again, the pareidolia effect, isn't it?
Yeah. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to talk a little bit about alternative explanations, because obviously not everything you see is paranormal, but it can be reported as paranormal. So the counterbalance to these phenomena that people report, but I just read out, is that other people can say, well, actually, there's misperception, there's a lot of things that could be happening which you haven't considered. And I just want to bring the attention to research articles that are available online. They're free. They're available from this organisation called the Association for the Scientific Study of Anomalous Phenomena, ASAP.
Yep.
And they're a good, serious paranormal research group. They are very dedicated. They take themselves very professional, and you can join. £15 a year it is. I do recommend that you visit their website and join. You get a lot back for your money, and you do get some very detailed. And I've certainly learned a lot just by reading their website. It's made my process of understanding the paranormal accelerate. I've kind of feel like it's saved me many years of making mistakes that I might have done, because you learn from other people and what they've experienced. And I'd just like to say that a lot of the research articles that are on there, online, free, have been written by someone called Maurice Townsend, and I believe he was one of the co-founders or original founders of the ASAP in 1981.
Oh, okay.
And his information is brilliant. I do recommend people have a look at it. Anyone with a serious interest in paranormal, or if you think your house is haunted, have a look on this website. You'll see other explanations what things might be, and I fully recommend it. So I just want to talk a bit about
good stuff.
Yeah, what he's. I mean, first off, he's written things about how do you know you've seen a ghost? Yeah. So, and what are the best signs that you've seen a ghost? So things like, Morris has looked at. If you claim to see a figure wearing old-fashioned clothes, it's unlikely you've seen a ghost, because it's probably going to be an actor or reenactor, fancy dress. If you see a transparent figure, again, he thinks it's unlikely because, photographs can be long exposure, and in real life, you might have hallucinated.
Right. Okay.
So, if you see a figure in a haunted location, he said, maybe you've seen a ghost, because unless the location is secure, then it could be an ordinary person happened to be in that area at the time. If you see a figure that behaves strangely, he thinks that it's probably unlikely it's a ghost, because it could be anyone behaving strangely. There's a lot of strange people out there, basically.
There certainly are.
Especially where we live.
Saturday morning, yes.
What about if a figure does something that seems impossible? Then he said, well, it might be a ghost, but then again, it could be misperception, it could be hallucination. If the figure should not be there, then again, that could be a ghost, unless it's someone who happens to arrive unexpectedly. And then if it's an unexpected figure seen in a photograph and patterns in photographs, then it's unlikely, because as you mentioned before, figures and faces can have to be seen in random images and patterns.
Right. Yeah.
And then the classic orb, we all know that if you see an orb in a photograph, it's 99.9% certain it's a dust particle.
Well, I think that's fairly well established now.
Yeah.
I think Steve Parsons, another famous paranormal investigator, has poo-pooed the idea. I think he's more or less put the kibosh on the idea that orbs can be photographed.
Yeah, I recommend reading his book Ghostology for anyone who has got a further interest in the paranormal. It's very easy to read, and it's very well detailed and researched, and certainly increased my understanding tenfold, basically.
Yes, good book.
So Morris says that most ghosts are reported to look solid and not look like normal people. There's very few transparent apparitions being seen. But of course, in TV shows, they always seem to be transparent, don't they? When just to give it effect, I guess.
That's the classic concept, isn't it?
I think he talks a bit about ghosts are very rarely seen to be interacting with the environment, so that you wouldn't see a ghost knocking on walls or moving objects. So he gives a definition of what a ghost is, and he said the most common definition is someone saying, "Oh, it's a returning spirit. It's a deceased person coming back to give a message." However, a definition that would be more useful is a ghost as a figure of a human or an animal that cannot be physically present. If a witness has good reason to think that they should be alone, say you're locked in a room by yourself and no one should be able to get in, then you might say that is a ghost.
Yeah. I think actually, just to sort of reinforce that idea, I think one of the most convincing articles I read recently was in the SPR, the Society of Psychical Research, and it was talking about manifestation, that people being in a restricted area, certainly entrance, I think, was under sort of security. It was obviously, as I say, restricted area, and they came across, or they walked past somebody in this restricted area. They didn't recognise that person didn't acknowledge them, certainly looked very real, and I think by the time the two people suddenly realised what they'd seen, and they looked back, that person had disappeared, and there was absolutely no record of there being anybody else in that restricted area. So that bears that out in terms of, I suppose, evidence. Although, of course, it's only what they're saying. There's no photographic evidence or anything else to support it, unfortunately.
No, and another reason what would make you think it might be a ghost rather than a person is if it walks through a wall. So that a human can't walk through a solid object, and if you see a figure walk through a wall, then that would probably increase the probability that it is what is supposed to be a ghost.
Yes.
And I can, from my own experience, I can say that I've seen that when I was a young boy, very young, 3. I did see an apparition of a woman which was solid walk through a door, and I knew from that age that people couldn't walk through doors, and it did freak me out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Scary stuff.
Yeah. So we continue with vision, peripheral vision. So a lot of shadow figures of men or persons tend to be reported to be seen out the corner of their eye, people's corner of their eye.
Yes.
And there's a big problem with that, is that we know, when you dissect eyes and you look at how peripheral vision works, your peripheral vision is not designed to be detailed. It's there's actually very little of the human eye that is very good at seeing detail, and that's usually when you're looking directly at something.
Sure.
And even then, what your eye does, it scans. It never keeps still. Your eye is always moving.
Right.
And it's scanning the area in front of you, and then your brain then constructs the picture. It does the rest.
Yes. So
again, that saying of that we see with our brains is very true, and because of that. This is where misperceptions can come in, because our eyes are not foolproof. If you see something that, particularly at the corner of your eye, it's a problem, because Morris here describes how the rods that are in your eye, these are the ones that are on that detect movement and light at the side, but they're not very good at with colour. So you're more likely to see black and white shapes from the peripherals of your eye.
Yeah. Yes.
And if you did turn to look at an object out with cornea eye, then you would start to see detail and colour. So if you were to see a red vase at the corner of your eye, you might not see the red. You might just see a very grey shape.
Mm-hmm.
But then as soon as you start focusing on it, the colour comes out.
Sure.
And this is very interesting because if you because your brain fills in the gaps, and if you were to so what was a vague dark shadow in the corner of your eye, it could turn into a very different shaped object in full colour once you look at it, and sometimes the difference will be so pronounced that the original object, what you thought you saw, will just will vanish.
Right. Okay.
It will vanish.
Do you think this is something to do with the sort of the fight or flight? The fact that if you catch something out of the corner of your eye, in some ways it catches your attention. I don't know. That's the way I always imagine it to be. So therefore, you've got the detail in front of you, but if you catch something out the corner of your eye, it almost puts you on alert. And I wonder whether that's again sort of a psychological factor, in that when people see these things and say I saw it and it was in the corner of my eye. Your explanation would perhaps enforce the idea that you turn around and it's not there, because obviously you're not seeing the full object in that sense, but it's there just to catch your attention. And once you get that attention, you're in a sort of a position where you should I be moving away from it, or should I be engaging it? So I wonder if it's part of that. It's just almost a psychological thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, what they found is that when people genuinely report they've seen something, they're not lying. The brain will fill in the gap. So the brain will put in a visual substitution into their into their brain, the process, and they'll be convinced that they actually saw that.
Yes.
And then when they turn to look at more detail, it suddenly goes, it's gone. That's just the brain readjusting itself to think, okay, yep, that wasn't there. But they're convinced it was there.
Yes,
because
right.
And what happens is your brain does this before you're consciously aware of it.
Yes.
So it fills in the gap before you're even aware of it.
Yes. Yes.
So that's something to consider, basically. So these shadow ghosts. I mean, I've seen two shadow people in my lifetime. One was at the corner of my eye, and it was in a long corridor. It was in a little corridor, and I saw this movement come towards me. It looked like a humanoid. I said, it was because it was coming towards me. I said sorry and moved out the way as if it was going to go past, and then I suddenly realised there's nobody there.
Right.
So if I was to look at this explanation, then I could then this we could say that any movement or anything out of the periphery of your eye will have no colour, and it's just my brain misinterpreted something to the side of me. The other shadow person I saw was on the end of, near my bed when I woke up. It had red eyes, but it was more of a black mass rather than a humanoid shape, but it did have a head shape. Right. But then I think I've talked about this before. I mean, that the whole hypnopompic experience of waking up from a dream state.
Yes.
I mean, I can't rule that out, but I mean, that was when I was living in a haunted house that had a lot of things going on. So that was an interesting experience for me. So night vision. So when you're looking at things in dark light, you're a lot more open to misperception and that. And I think something's worth to consider is when you move from bright light to darkness. It takes about 40 minutes for your eyes to adjust fully, and then you can misperceive things in the darkness.
Yes.
And it's interesting how, and Maurice Townsend here points out that a lot of these ghost vigils are done by people who are doing a vigil in darkness, coming out for a break in light for 10 minutes, going back into darkness, coming out in the light, going back in the darkness. So, I mean, that's not exactly good for a proper investigation. Basically.
And again, that's down to I guess the saying "tricks of the light."
Yeah.
It can be that. Yeah.
I think some people might say, well, not everything's a misperception. And a couple of objections to that might be, well, we would notice if we were misperceiving. People might say, well, of course you would know if you were misperceived something. And Morris is saying, well, we actually misperceive all the time because our brains shows us what we expect to see. So in a way, we all misperceive. It's the way we are wired. And we don't notice anything odd. Sometimes we're aware of the possibility of misperceiving, but most people never do. Even when they point it out to them, when it's pointed out to them, they won't notice it. Some people might say, well, aren't misperceptions supposed to be poorly visible? If you see something that is mistaken, then it's supposed to be poorly visible. And he says that many perceptions are caused by poorly seen objects, like strong patterns of light and shade can cause them. However, the object that is substituted for them comes from visual memory. So your brain is going through your memory banks thinking, let me pick an object out and put it in there. And then that can look perfectly normal and contain a lot of detail.
Right. Okay.
So while you're misperceiving something and you don't actually see the real object causing it at all, what you think you're seeing is a substitute.
Yes. So it's almost like your brain's photoshopping.
Yeah.
You're just looking at. Yeah.
And then someone might say, well, misperception only happens to some people in special circumstances. And again, he talks about, no, we all misperceive. It's part of our normal way of perception works. So basically, I think what we're saying is basically our brain is low grade.
Which, I suppose you have to be careful who you'd accuse of having a low grade brain. But I think the point is that I think we take everything for granted that we see, and we don't necessarily challenge it. We just assume that what we're seeing is it. And I think the thing is that we probably have a poor understanding of our own perceptions and the things that can influence what we're seeing, those perceptions. So I guess that in a lot of cases of reported sightings of apparitions, ghosts, whatever, a lot of it could probably be explained. But of course the trouble is, it's at the moment, there's no way of recording your sight. All you're then relying on is eyewitness testimony. Vision. And
that is another topic in itself, basically, how people report these incidences from memory.
Yeah.
But I think overall, if you thought you were seeing things, then you would have to take into consideration how the eye works, how your brain processes it, how it fills in gaps, how low light affects your vision, how peripheral vision affects what you perceive to see. And I can hold my hands up and think, I was convinced I definitely saw a shadow person at the funeral, but now that I've looked at how the eye works and how peripheral vision works and how it lacks detail and colour, then why not see black shapes out there corner of your eye?
Absolutely, and particularly if you're in a sort of highly emotional state, as you would be at a funeral anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for that, Andy. I think that wraps it up. So, to coin a phrase, I'll keep an eye open for you.
Yep. See you later.